It's my privilege to kick us off for the last plenary of this amazing convening. My name is Jamie McAuliffe. I'm the director of the Global Opportunity Youth Network, which is GOIN. It's our sister network that extends this work to communities outside the United States in places like India, Africa, Latin America. We have now over 12 communities with hundreds of partners and thousands of young people involved in our work. And normally, we'd have many of them here with us during this meeting. And I asked Steve and Monique if I could say a few words, because unfortunately, we are having our global convening in Mombasa, Kenya in just a few weeks' time. So we couldn't work out having a global group here. So I wanted to kind of extend a warm welcome from that network and community and say a few words about what we're trying to achieve. And then we have a video from one of our newest communities that I want to share with you to just give you a sense of what we're all about. What I'm wearing here, I was joking with Steve that jacket we all got was one of the nicest pieces of swag I've ever gotten at one of these convenings. But actually, I just got back from Senegal, where we launched GOIN Thiès, which is a city right outside of Dakar. And they had everybody wearing these beautiful scarves as part of the launch that was led by young people in Thiès to kick off our work there. So I'm wearing it in their honor. But briefly, the Global Opportunity Youth Network is extending the work of youth-led, community-led work to basically provide inclusive pathways for young people into decent work. As many of you may know, there are over 600 million young people who we consider opportunity youth, out of school, out of work, and or underemployed, which is a big problem in many of the countries we work. And for the future of our planet, it's critical that we provide support so that young people can realize their dreams, their aspirations, and get connected to decent work. And we're doing this now with hundreds of partners. In 12 communities, we're growing to 30 communities over the next year. And we hope over time we'll continue to integrate our two networks with young leaders and community leaders who care about the issues around global opportunity youth. We're about to play a video from our newest community, GOIN Barranquilla. And it's actually very much in keeping with the theme today of narrative change. So these young people have gotten together to put together a video on what it means to them to be opportunity youth in their language. In Latin America, most young people in the opportunity youth category are defined as ninis, not in education or employment. And that sort of negative connotation continues to permeate through a lot of the youth work that's happening in Latin America and elsewhere around the world. So this video is a little bit of a manifesto to counter that narrative. And so I'll have them play it. I'll just say one more thing, which is this is the kind of diagnosis of the problem. They're also coming out with another video that's the recommended solutions, which is what young people in our communities do. They help analyze what the critical constraints are to economic opportunity in their communities, and then they come up with some of the priorities and solutions that they would like to push forward and champion with policymakers, with funders, and with others in their community. So this is a brief video from our colleagues in Barranquilla, so why don't we go ahead and play it.
Hola, soy María.
Hola, soy Juan.
Soy Natalie.
Soy Carlos. Soy un joven con potencial y soy uno de los miles de nombres que nadie conoce.
Soy las miles de caras que no se ven.
Soy las miles de voces que no se escuchan.
Soy las miles de oportunidades que no mandan.
Soy quien tiene la capacidad, más no la oportunidad.
Soy la solución, pero me ves como un problema. Simplemente tu prejuicio no te permite ver mi potencial.
Soy una de muchas jóvenes con poca experiencia, lejos de casa en un país desconocido. En busca de oportunidades para sobrevivir en un camino lleno de expectativas.
Soy la voz de los que se sienten explotados por el sistema.
Soy una más de las que siente que el futuro está en otro país.
Quiero ser y crecer.
Quiero ser yo sin miedo a que me juzguen.
Quiero dar el primer paso para convertirme en quien realmente quiero ser. Quiero ser un ejemplo de resiliencia. Quiero aprender y enseñar.
Quiero hacer lo que me gusta.
No lo que me toca.
Quiero emprender sin temor al fracaso.
Quiero ser yo sin culpar.
Quiero ser escuchada e incluida.
Queremos ser jóvenes sin miedo.
Pero soy muy joven.
pero no sé otro idioma.
Pero no me dan las oportunidades para desarrollar mi potencial.
Pero eres mujer y esto es para hombres.
Pero eres diferente. Pero eres migrante. Pero no estás hecho para este trabajo.
Pero no terminaste la carrera. Pero no te fue bien en la IFES.
Pero no tienes buenas notas.
Pero tienes que elegir entre trabajar o estudiar.
Pero mi familia no me apoya.
Aunque muchas personas han intentado callarme, sigo en pie. Sigo en pie por mi juventud.
Sigo en pie por mis sueños y porque algún día podamos tener las oportunidades.
Pues sin importar la discriminación y los estigmas que tengas sobre mí, creo en la transformación más allá de mi color y mi identidad.
Soy un joven con potencial.
So that last phrase is basically, we've had enough with Ninis, which is one of the messages they want to send. So thank you. We just wanted to share that brief message, and hope we'll be bringing more global voices to this convening, and vice versa. We have over 20 people from the US network joining us in Mombasa in a few weeks, which we're really, really excited about. So thank you. And over to Monique. All right.
So we had a conversation earlier about narrative change, and in that conversation we talked about our culture bearers, and we also talked specifically about art and artists and the role that they play in being our culture bearers. They help us to make sense and meaning of the world that's happening around us, and they also help us to understand our feelings in ways that help transform our feelings into action. So it's not an accident. It's very intentional that we have been honored by our young adult partners who have kicked us off for every single plenary here today by sharing spoken word with us. And in our conversation outside today, one of the things we talked about is the deep nourishment that they have brought into every single space. When we all do the work that we do, this work that is about pouring out, giving out, taking things outside, moving things from inside of ourselves outward towards others. The gift that we get from these young poets is not just nourishment, it's also healing. It helps us to be strengthened and fortified for the work ahead. And so what I really want to ask you to join me in doing is we are going to have our final spoken word from our young poets. But for today, because they've already graciously agreed to join us in May in Boston, but for our last gathering here, they're going to share some more of their art and their spoken word with us. And what I want to ask you to do is from your heart, express the deep thankfulness that we all receive, the nourishment that we all receive, the way that they help us connect to and restore our own joy for the work ahead. I want to ask you to just join me as they wrap up and really celebrating them and giving back to them the energy, the nourishment, and love that they have so generously given to us. Thank you. I'm excited to turn this over to you all, and I'm thanking the OYF family for doing this real joyful celebration with them when they have done with their performance today. Thank you.
I know her!
Good afternoon. My name is Kylan Denny. I'm on the Metaphor Houston Youth Slam Poetry Team, and I'm currently a freshman at Stanford University. So some context for this poem: I graduated from a high school that is predominantly minorities, in which all of the feeder schools, elementary and middle school, are Title I schools. And one day when I was in class, there was this guy who, unlike myself and most of my other classmates, came from a very affluent and by all standards, very well-off background. And he said something that really caught me off guard in not only its content, but also its audacity. So I wrote this poem in response to that, and it is titled Swim. a hypothetical conversation with the guy who said a gay African American woman would have a better chance at getting into his dream school than him. Being a minority is a lot like swimming. In life, you get tossed in the deep end. No safety net or guarantee. In this sport of skill, you sink or swim. We don't get inflated privilege with the sealed promise of keeping us afloat. So no, being able to check every box of disadvantage off an application sheet isn't something to be envious of. You think you can swim with the sharks, though. Don't know how fast discrimination will eat you up, spit you back out. Affirmative action and meeting the status quo minority count doesn't make up for the deep sea of backhanded compliments and suspicious looks we get thrown our way. I'm pissed off with kids who think life would be served to them on a silver platter if they had an at-risk status to claim, because I promise you wouldn't last a minute trying to walk in my shoes, let alone swim in this pool of hypocrisy. But it's in human nature to want what we don't have. Oh, how to be so privileged to wish for hardship. If you insist, come on in, the water's fine. I'm interested to see how long you'll last, how much your wealth is worth. Will it help you tread these waters? Don't be afraid of a little stereotypes. You'll warm up to the insults if you stay in long enough. Kick your feet a little harder, past the slurs and audacity. It's not that hard to keep your head above water. It's only been a few minutes. You can doggy paddle past catcalls, can't you? Take a deep dive in head first and see where you end up. Didn't anybody ever tell you this was the deep end? Because now you're in my family's pool. Swallow the chlorine and find out reality has a bitter aftertaste. And my genetic waters are kept company by sharks. By now, you should know how to swim with the big fish. This pool is filled to the brim with trials, tribulations, backstabbing, misogyny, racism, colorism, and prejudice. No, you can't use a flotation device because this is the kiddie pool. I come from a family of minorities where the pressure of oppression takes more breath out your lungs than drowning, where hope floats only if humility and dignity are allowed to sink first. How envious I am of you to seek out my struggle just so it can benefit you. You get to test the waters and see which plight makes you the most overcoming, the most challenged, the most in need of a helping hand. And these waters of misfortune, the only hands reaching out to help you come from those drowning with you. Family fighting to stay above water, but willing to give up their last breath just to see you inhale. And while we may be trademarked by every disadvantage you could list, our blood is thicker than water. And my minority line veins is the reason I ain't giving up on this swim. So you can cry me a river about how your privilege is holding you back, but to that I just say, learn how to tread water and you'll find a way out. Thinking that adopting the title of a minority will somehow make your life better has me convinced you must be fresh out the pool, still wet behind the ears. So I'd advise you against wishing you were any part me, because with my DNA, you drown in my gene pool. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome two of my other teammates up to do a group piece for y'all.
Kylan, Denny, y'all. Are you moving this back? Oh, Bean wants us to teach y'all a chant. So slam poetry, as y'all can see, is very inclusive with the audience. So our team, because we're called Metaphor Houston, we have a chant where we say metaphor plus 4, and then everyone says we ate. So let's try real quick. Ready? Metaphor plus 4, we ate. Ooh. Perfect. Good job, guys. All right, again, my name is Ariana Lee. I'm a freshman at Stanford University as well, and I'm also the 2023 Houston Youth Poet Laureate. I wrote this piece after the overturning of Roe v. Wade because I wanted to express my anguish at this injustice, but through a unique way. I'm excited for y'all to hear this piece.
Come on. Let's go, y'all.
Row, row, row your boat
Gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
This song is about taking control.
Your life, your choice.
Don't go with the flow.
You're in charge of your boat.
You've got your hands on the oars.
Or this song is different.
Because you're a woman. Row, row, Roe v. Wade is about control over your body.
Pro-life, pro-choice.
Two extremes in the same American boat.
Except boats are named after women, and ours was capsized,
Overturned despite our boat taking centuries to build.
and having held us for half of one. Now you are expected to do the holding.
A woman's arms.
Expected to cradle an unwanted child.
Gently down the stream. But no stream is always gentle.
In a storm, it can be raining cats and dogs.
But the reigning men are the real animals.
Women have always braved troubled waters.
And can't seem to catch a break.
It should be her choice if her water breaks. Merrily, 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 married.
Tying a knot isn't enough for men. They still want to tie a woman up in legalities.
Tire her, deny her own body.
If life-giving DNA is that important to men,
you'd think they'd have learned
To not be dicks.
life is but a dream.
But who dreams of a life like this?
Where an automatic gun receives more legal protection than a woman who wants autonomy.
Women are the life givers,
Just like rivers,
fountains, wells,
offsprings, men assailing women, setting sail sets a monstrous precedent for this country.
Without legal protection, what do men think will happen in the land of the free?
Home of the women who have braved the monster claw of a clothes hanger.
To remove the proto-life they do not have room in their life for.
Women can't row a boat when the hands on the oars are not our own.
Women can't wade through the waters and arrive safely on the other side. The flow is flawed.
Boats been overturned and only infant life jackets are available. Row, row, Roe v. Wade, broadcasted live stream. Merrily, merrily, merrily.
Married.
Life, a stolen dream. Thank you.
We ate.
Hi everyone, my name is Isabella Diaz-Mira. I'm a freshman at Washington University in St. Louis. And the piece that we're about to perform, I wrote it, or we all wrote it, following the events of the submersible that happened late July in the same week that a migrant boat sunk in the Mediterranean. The ocean claims a person's life without discrimination, but on land, some people have the power to decide which lives get lost at sea. While the world searched for a submersible, the Greek Coast Guard condemned 700 refugees from Pakistan, Palestine, Egypt, Syria, and Afghanistan to fight for their lives, breaths held under the water only for their deaths to barely scratch the surface.
When billionaires die, billions notice, interrupting the stream of media across our screens.
But their deaths beg the question, when the shifting sea of society overtakes us,
who gets thrown the lifesaver? The lifeboats on the Titanic prioritize the wealthy. More third-class children died on board than first-class men.
So I guess women and children first only applies when the life jacket is a three-piece suit. On their way to explore the classic and classist tragedy of the Titanic, 5 rich people demonstrated the classism of today.
Everyone awaited the fate of OceanGate's Watergate, but over 25,000 refugees have died in the Mediterranean Sea since 2015.
Even if survivors are on board,
the privileged are the ones who get to shore.
Society's bar of tolerating the poor
is literally below sea level.
So tell me,
who gets thrown the lifesaver?
The discrimination is as plain as the day hundreds of refugees drowned on their way from Libya to Italy. Their status and race made it easier to erase their importance on this planet. Their lives watered down, caught in the currents of others' currencies. Their struggles don't make a ripple in the sea.
People seeking asylum only to be met with sudden silence.
When boats are decorated with deaths of migrants and slaves.
They drown with their hands restrained because they know better than to wave.
They took us from the homeland for our service, but refused to serve us a home.
The SOS calls are seen as minor inconveniences.
To the ones who have only ever known steady waters, being marginalized means you're always in uncharted waters.
Swimming with sharks dressed in white collars.
The world is your oyster.
Only if you can afford the pearls. When a riptide
Drags the oppressed to the bottom of the sea. The press doesn't race to save the day because people of color aren't given a say. We're only recognized when accolades come before our names.
But refugees are cast adrift before they have a chance to succeed. The privileged count the threads and strands in their bed sheets.
The rest don't count when they're stranded in deathbeds.
The billionaires will receive
funerals, epitaphs, and headstones to commemorate their memory.
The migrants will receive
no hymns, no flowers, no eulogies, no lifesaver to rescue their memory.
We know everything about those 5 men under the sea.
We know this about the refugees.
They're nowhere to be found. Thank you.
You guys come this way, maybe? Yeah. Dev, come on down. I feel lonely. Come on down. You want?
Well, originally Anthony's going to be just for miking purposes, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You sit here. You sit here.
Thank you. Thank you. Woo. Damn them folks from Houston, they always make me cry. Welcome, everyone. That's a tough act to follow, so we'll take a breath and jump in. I'm Steve Patrick. I'm Vice President of the Aspen Institute, Executive Director of the Forum for Community Solutions. This is an amazing moment for us at the Forum right now because it's the confluence of two meetings. And everybody should have done this by now who's been at the OYF, so if you haven't, it's on you. But to folks who just joined us, if you walk around the front of the registration building, there's a trail that's about less than half a mile. It'll take you to the confluence of 2 rivers. And to me, that's a special and valuable and important and auspicious place to go. So this is the confluence of 2 rivers. This is the confluence of the Opportunity Youth Forum, the closing plenary, and the launch of a brand new funder community of practice around belonging, meaning, well-being, and purpose, or a funder COP for BMWP, because funders just do acronyms all the time, right, Emil? Yes. But we really want to welcome the folks who have just arrived in town for this conversation. We encourage y'all to mix, blend, connect. We only have a little bit of time during the break. For those of you who have arrived for the Funder Community of Practice, we're actually going to stay here. On the written agenda, it might say to go somewhere else, but we decided y'all should stay in Door Hosier. So when this ends, there'll be a break. There'll be a lot of tears, a lot of hugging, a lot of goodbye, a lot of see you soon. But for those of us who are staying to go deep on belonging and meaning and purpose, we'll have a 15-minute break and we'll come back into this room, so you don't have to go anywhere. This is also an important closing to the Opportunity Youth Forum and Fund, a couple of days of getting together and meeting. And I think it's been all right. How's it been, everybody? How's it going this time around? Yeah? Yeah, and we've woven a lot of content into this related to the idea of belonging and meaning. And I'll just name that journey for us as we shift to a plenary on purpose as a network for 10 years now has been about thinking about how you operationalize racial and gender equity. And boy, some of those last poems made me think about gender equity in unique ways, new ways. So how do you operationalize equity? And on our own journey, our spiritual leaders, our gurus have been, for this Opportunity Youth Forum Network, you know, we've had John Powell with us multiple times, who's really one of the most thoughtful leaders on belonging, and this network has embraced a lot of Powell's thinking and frame. And John Powell and team, there are 2 folks from Othering and Belonging Institute here with us for the next meeting, and who are also part of the OYF. And then we've really, and some of you may have heard Arnold Chandler do a session in here right before this, deep, right? And Arnold's helped us think about meaning-based interventions, and essentially that meaning-based interventions have an outsized positive impact on the life trajectory of young people of color, full stop. And so how do you include and infuse and make meaning part of the intel inside the pathways that young people find themselves in our country? And we've done a ton to respond to young people on well-being. So we're going to hear from some Yelders, some young adult leaders on the push, and Juan Martinez and team and others with some support from Annie Casey and Cynthia Dreamweaver, who I saw somewhere out there, have really helped to define well-being for their own community and themselves. And we've really embraced the need for well-being and for healing. And a lot of you heard Sean Ginwright with us several times now in our network, who's Dr. G, who has helped us really understand the importance of healing. I think we heard some of that in the poetry earlier, how important it is to heal. And then purpose. So we're about to talk about purpose. We are really excited that Anthony has come and joined us and actually come to everything for the last couple of days to kind of learn alongside us. And so as we launch this new community of practice, the first of those words strung together that we'll talk about is the last word, purpose. And it really came to us as a network from a number of funders. I think John Baer is probably somewhere here, who was at the Blank Foundation and half a dozen other funders, foundations. It's not that he can't keep a job, he just is sought after as a philanthro leader. But John Baer came to us after one of our online meetings during COVID and said, what if we do a lot of investment in purpose, but we fund things like the Yale Law School, the Yale class on happiness, the most popular class on happiness. We don't reach low income or communities of color. It seems like you have a network that might reach that. What if we do that together? And our answer was not without belonging, right? We felt like purpose actually was something that we needed to better understand, but it felt like an inequity issue in and of itself, that there wasn't equitable access to purpose. What a strange thing. So that's how we got to this panel, this plenary, this discussion of purpose. And we wanted to start, as we often do, with the lived experience of young adults, and then bring in the badass expert from Cornell to kind of riff on that. He won't like that I just said that, but sorry, Anthony. And so that's what we're going to do now, and then we'll go to the audience after Anthony does his kind of Purpose 101 for us, all right? So I'm just going to kick it to my colleagues here and finally shut up. I warned them that I had to do some framing, so I did warn you guys. And let me just start with Kimberly, and why don't you, there's only one question for this panel, which is like, tell us about who you are, what you do, and how you got here. And let us know about the and let us know about the work you do. So I'll start with Kimberly, and we'll work our way down. Why don't you introduce yourself the way you'd like to, and then answer that question if you would.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Oh yeah, by the way, Steve, he's our uncle.
Nice.
But before I get started, I'm kind of nervous right now. I'm a natural scientist, unlike this room. you don't see scientists talk to a room with this many people. So it's nice seeing people that aren't wearing rubber boots and really puffy jackets. It's kind of cool, actually. So I'm having a good time. But I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Pikok. I am from Burrow, Alaska, which is the tip top of Alaska in the Alaskan Arctic. I am a part of the,
That's cool.
I'm part of the Fresh Tax Wellbeing Project, but I'm also a graduate student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks in the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences, studying the seasonal changes of spring whaling using local observations. And, thank you. I love Steve's question just because I relate a lot of things to community and how we relate things back to nature and how we interact with nature itself. And the purpose shows up in my community in various ways, but it always ends up relating back to nature and how we connect back to the land, back to the animals, but also giving back to the community using land and animals. And it really inspired me to find my purpose, because growing up, I was told that as a Native person, you're not allowed to become a scientist because you don't have the accessibility to go to college. But I'm here, I'm a wildlife biologist, and it's just something that's really empowering.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to share a cute little reflection that I wrote in a scientific journal article that I co-authored, and it just got published a few months ago. And I wanted to share this because I think it relates to the purpose of my community and the purpose of, the reason that I am a wildlife biologist, the reason why I like to go outside and show people random plants that I think are really cool. But I wanted to give a little context. So I wrote this paper for the Alaska Arctic Observatory and Knowledge Hub, which I'm a graduate student researcher for. And within this organization, we work with local hunters in 5 Alaskan Arctic communities, and we use their local observations to help inform managers, wildlife biologists, and even community members on what's going on in the Arctic, using information that's relevant to a hunter so we can make better choices on how to manage our land and manage the wildlife species. And this reflection is kind of trying to relate nature back into well-being, but also relating it back to how we can connect humans back to nature so we can better our well-being and have better connections just to the land and animals itself. And I'm sorry, I'm reading off of a thing. My reflection is kind of long, but it's cute.
Yeah.
So in regards to working with the AOK observers and researchers, I was reminded of a lesson that I learned as a kid, which was that everything has a story, from the rocks to the mountains, to the plants and animals, to the ocean and rivers, and to us, because we all have a story to tell. Even though different groups of people from different cultures and careers may interpret or understand stories differently, no matter how the story is told and interpreted, each story will talk about growth, changes, extreme events, and struggles. I did not realize how looking at each living thing as their own main character in a story made it feel like a personal connection or a sense of self, because we can relate to certain stages of their life. Throughout my college journey, I have been told to keep personal matters or biases away from research, but these AOK observations are not just observations for data purposes or random words written on a screen or paper, but knowing the ice and ocean conditions, understanding animal movements, and knowing the weather conditions is personal and important to our communities and hunters, because this is a type of knowledge we need to know to have food on our tables, give back to the communities, teach our children, but also learn how to take better care of the land around us. Hold on, there's more. Thank you. I see the AOK observations as stories. There's so much written There's so much within the people that write these observations, and there is so much knowledge within their observations. These observers can tell the sea ice's story, the bowhead whale story, seals, caribou, the weather, etc., just by looking at it, observing it, and feeling it. Their observations taught me that everything in nature is an open book. You just need to allow yourself to read it, understand it, watch it, and listen to it. That's how you learn their stories and how you learn how to correctly tell their stories. Make people want to learn more by how you tell the stories about the land and ocean and animals around you. With the connections and relationships that we have, we're able to respectfully tell these stories from different perspectives, but we still highlight and uplift the importance of our indigenous knowledge holders and our connections to nature.
That's awesome. I heard a lot of interesting stuff in there. I would even connect it to some of Anthony's scholarship. He talks about purpose as something that brings us, a frame that brings us forward, and meaning making is how you look back at, and both of those being really important. I hear so much meaning in what you've shared, so thank you. Let's keep going with an introduction and who you are. What's your work?
All right. Aloha, guys. Thank you for watching us. I feel kind of nervous, but it's all right. We're just gonna rock it. So yeah. My name's Michijah Perez Fonseca. I'm born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii. I am 23 years old. I'm gonna be 24 this month. And I feel real honored to be up here. This is nuts. I don't really get to do this kind of stuff back at home, but it's pretty nuts. But anyways, for me, my life story and, growing up wasn't really like about going to school and stuff. It was kind of more rougher and stuff like that. I was brought up on the streets of Hawaii and stuff like that, so everything I did was pretty much all on my own. I was just self-taught. I just learned from looking at other people and what they do. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But at the same time, I learned a lot of stuff from growing up on the streets, Taught me how to be appreciative, taught me how to pick certain people in my life, taught me how to recognize people's actions and stuff like that. So I'm real appreciative of that. And while I was homeless, I was living on the streets for like 7 years and stuff like that. So yeah, it was real fun. At least I had my friend and stuff like that. And then talking about our program and stuff like that, but how I got introduced to our program, the Kawailoa Project, was this program called RISE, and they have these youth outreach workers where they come out and they look for like homeless youth and stuff like that to help them out and get them back into emergency shelters and stuff like that. So I was one of them youths that they found and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, okay, bet. I got nowhere else to go. Family's gone, it's dysfunctional, so I'm really just all by myself, so I'm just gonna go with it, I don't know where it's gonna take me, but it's gonna take me somewhere. So, I just rode with whatever I got, and from going into that shelter, I was living there for a year, and then I started doing volunteer work at this job I work at now. I've been working there 3 years now, but I was doing volunteer work. I was doing only 4 hours, getting paid $40 a day, just using that for grabbing me something to eat, some water, food, whatever, you already know. And then from that, I started doing internship because of the shelter I was staying at. They helped me find other programs that help out with these local farms and stuff that are on Oahu. So I got introduced to that, and then I got hired on as an intern for like 4 months. And then just so happened that farm that I was volunteering at was one of the farms they was helping out. So it was like an A+ for me because I was right there at the shelter, and the farm was like right here. So I just walk my butt all the way to the farm, and then, I work and I do my 8 hours and I go back to the shelter, and, it's another day after that. But after a while, like doing it for like so long, like for 3 years, it kind of like grew on me and stuff like that. So, it kind of made me like open my eyes, like, maybe God put me here for a reason. Yes, sir. So, I'm really grateful for that. And, like coming as a Hawaiian, like, I didn't grow up learning our culture and stuff like that. So like for me, coming to this farm got me like real closer to my culture and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that because it makes me feel more prouder of myself because of what our people did for our land and stuff like that. So just me knowing that makes me proud, you know what I mean? So I want to continue that. But anyways, back to the story again, but anyways, I'm back to the story. So so I've been working at this farm for like 3 years now. The shelter I was living at, they got my own place now. It's not that big, but price in Hawaii is like price out of paradise. Ian Thongi said that. It's kind of rough, and paying for your electricity on the side, water bill on the side, shit catches up. So that shit hard. I'm sorry for my language too, but that's how I really feel and stuff. So I love you guys. You guys all listen to me. I feel important right now.
You are.
But just getting back to the story again, seeing these other homelesses that come and volunteer at our farm, kind of makes me happy too, because it makes me look back and realize I was once in their shoes too, you know what I mean? And I feel if I help them out and they see that I came from the same place that they came from, makes them feel like they can do the same thing too. So I just want to help out the kids that been homeless and been traumatized or just been struggling all their life. I want to be that one guy to help them out and stuff like that and tell them you're not alone. You know what I mean? There's people out there that are struggling and got different paths and stuff like that. And even though we all got different struggles, it's still the same thing. So I really feel like we got to learn how to help one another out, even though we come from different cultures, different backgrounds. It doesn't even matter if you've been to jail or not, we all got the same thing. So, back again. Anyways, Fred, I'm sorry.
What's your current job, bro?
My current job, okay, so I'm a farm assistant, okay, nothing special, but I'm also a peer mentor. So all the kids that come to our farm, I work with them, I teach them how to do cultivation, how to propagate stuff, how to replant plants and stuff.
Connect to the Aina.
Yeah, reconnect with that Aina, you know what I mean? And if you split that in half, I is food in Hawaiian, and Aina is just land, and Na is plural, so it's for the people, you know what I mean? So everything you do is all aloha.
Aloha.
And, coming from the bottom, you got nothing but aloha, so you gotta give to get, you know what I mean? So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's my presentation, y'all.
That's I can't wait to hear what Anthony has to say in reflection of this, and we ain't done yet. We got one more little vignette, and then we're gonna pivot.
Devin, you gotta close it off, brother.
Devin, man, please.
Good afternoon.
Yourself.
This is a beautiful room. Happy to see you all. Happy to be up here. My name is Devin Edwards, born and raised in Boston, Mass. This is always a big moment for me because when I look back and reflect the moment and we realize why we're here and what we're here for, I feel like I feel like I know it's bigger than us. The reason I started in this, the reason I became invited to these platforms, the reason I'm in a room like this is because almost a decade ago, I had to be labeled at risk. And unfortunately, opportunity came to me when I was labeled at risk. I'm the oldest of three. I'm black and Puerto Rican, so my mom worked hard, 2 jobs. She did the best she could for me, best schooling, best after schools. But as a kid from the neighborhood, sometimes what your mom instills into you doesn't go in one ear and out the other. It's just you don't really practice it as hard as she wants you to practice it. So for me, I grew up in the streets. The streets was also my family. The streets played a big part in my life because I realized I can make a way of life in the streets. I wasn't able to get a job. I dropped out of high school. Wasn't able to get a job. So all I know is my uncles and cousins around me creating a way of life, income. So being labeled at risk, being labeled a gangbanger, it wasn't something I was proud of, but I took it on because it's what I know, it's what I saw my uncles, my cousins. It's what I saw. It's the lifestyle that was glorified during that time, which it still is, unfortunately. But for me, the streets was a way of, like I said, income. I sold guns, I sold drugs, I sold stolen goods. But that was me realizing that I'm the oldest of 3. So my mom didn't have to work too hard. she could spend more money on my little brother and my little sister, and I could bring money home. So there was a purpose in me being in the streets. It was a way, create some money. There'll be times in which I come home and, that day or that week, I probably made more than my mom made in her 2 paychecks collectively combined. So I didn't lose sight of that at all. It actually moved me. To do better, but better in the streets at any time. And doing better in the streets just means you scale up. You get deeper involved. So for me, I had to be labeled at risk to get into all of this. But it's the beauty, I feel like, of the power of mentorship, the power of having people around you that's going to support you and push you in the right direction. I couldn't see what I see now, that is bigger than me. I was just in it, and that's all I knew, between my music, family and friends, as I said. So when I was about 17, 18, I was going to be facing like a federal sentence, and I had a family friend who was in law enforcement during the time, and he was like, Devin, I see you out here, basically, like your name comes up in the databases all the time. You're getting stopped and frisked all the time. Like, I know your mother raised you to do the right thing. But I'm like, yeah, I need a job. I need to make some money, so you know exactly where I'm out here. He was just like, well, listen, this is a heads up. So I'm like, dang, I'm 17, I'm about to be 18. That means when you're 18, you got big boy time. It's a different level of jail and incarceration. Like, so I'm like, and my birthday was like a month away. So I'm like, do I really want to be going through this while I'm thinking about my birthday, all of this stuff? So, like I said, I was making good enough money during the time in the streets. So I said, I'm gonna just take a vacation. And for me, vacations that was my first time like on a plane. Sometimes you see just on your neighborhood. Traveling far from me was just going to like the next neighborhood. Like it wasn't even, and you don't travel to the next neighborhood if it's not friendly for you to go there. So I got on a plane. I had family in Florida, so I said I didn't even tell them I was coming. I just said I know where I can go. And between my 17 going on 18, the biggest point in my life was my father passed away. So that got me deeper into the streets because, my father figure, who's somebody I looked up my whole life, is now gone. So it got me deeper into the streets. So now I'm running the streets with that on my back. Not caring about nothing. I'm invisible at that time. Nobody's going to stop me. But I also thought my father was also a guy who went through the whole incarceration system. He went to jail for shooting somebody when I was 2 years old. So I didn't meet him until he knew me, but I didn't meet him fully until he got out a few years later. And I used to go down south. He's from Dirt Road, South Carolina. So for me, that's also like another vacation. Every summer he used to come pick me up after school was done, and he'll take me down. Me and my brothers down there for the summer. So I did that up until I was about 15, but once again, when you start to age, you're like, listen, Pops, this is fun and all, but I'm ready to make some money. I got my own little flip phone at this time. Like, I got friends back home now. Like, it's summertime. What we do in the summer? We go play ding dong ditch, like throw rocks at cars. Like, we in the neighborhood. We bored, but you got to create fun. So him passing away is a big point in my life. Like I said, I had to. Hold on, let me rewind real quick. I didn't tell you about the Florida part. So Florida served as a big presence for me because him passing away, me going through all of that, and having a family in which I can go to a place like Florida. Now you got nature. Now you just in the suburbs. Like I ain't hearing no sirens. I'm not around skyscrapers. I can't take public transportation. I gotta rely on a ride or ride a bike like a mile or two. But it served as a good point in my life for 2 years. So, but I didn't see it then. I seen it as I got to go on a run. And so it lasted about 2 years. I was away from my family, but during the whole time, I'm thinking about why did I leave my family behind? I'm the oldest. I'm the man of the house. Why did I leave my family behind? So it was rubbing me wrong. So in Florida, I had a lot of healing moments in my life. I worked 2 jobs while I was there. And then at the time I turned 21, I was going to turn 21, I had enough of Florida. I was like, nah, I miss my peoples, I miss my family. So I went back home. And I get back home, and unfortunately now, I went back home and I did the same thing that I just removed myself from. caught a case, and then I was like, I think for me that was like a real pivotal moment. I was like, you just avoided this for 2 years, then you came back and it slapped you in the face again. So I kind of sat myself down. So you moving too quick, sit down. But I was able to do that because of the support system around me. In Boston, when you're known, you get in databases, you get points in the system. Police got point system and everything. But there's also a program called a street worker program. And the street workers knew everybody and every active players in each hood. So, it's during the summer, everybody's outside. You're not keeping nobody inside during the summer. Like, we outside, we outside cooking out in places we're not even supposed to be cooking out at, portable, charcoal grills and all that. We cooking, drinking. So it was probably like a month or two that I was back in Boston. But that month or two was very big for me. Like, I ran into what I tried to avoid in those 2 years. And then in those 2 months, caught a case, right on the radar again. It was like I didn't accomplish anything. So then, for me, at that point, my little sister and my little brother, they've grown so much. I came back home, and it was like a lot of differences. I just seen them grow so much, and I was like, okay. Like, I taught them right from wrong already. They saw me in the neighborhood. They saw me doing what I do. They saw me bringing, a lot of friends to the house. They saw, I did the big brother thing. I showed them, unfortunately, the wrong thing first, and now I can show them the right thing. So for me, they always at the core of what I do and why I do it, family. But I want to fast forward to the street worker program, because the street worker program, this lady named Maria, who I knew, she was like a family friend at the same time. This goes back to having family friends and knowing the neighborhood that you're in. She was a part of the street worker program. So what that program does is they go to individual neighborhoods, they defuse. They might know a shooting's going to happen here at this time. They're going to go to that neighborhood and tell them. And we would call that a different word, but it was information. It was information at the time. We'll say that. So the street worker came up to me, Ray, like, yo, D, I see you out here all day, all the time. Like, what are you doing here? I'm like, you know what I'm doing? Like, I'm making some money. Like, what are you doing here? Because I be here, you don't. And you just coming through like you're passing bys, and you gotta go to the next neighborhood. Like, you here for work, I'm here for work at the same time. It's just not the same type of work. So she was like, nah, like, yeah, I know your mom. Like, I was born and raised with her. Like, she instilled all the right things into you. She's like, and I know you can do better. So she's like, I got this program where it's a paid internship. You'll learn how to do some coding. She's like, if you're up for it, I'm gonna come back tomorrow with a clipboard, and then we'll get you all signed up. So at that time, certain conversations that you have when you have in a neighborhood, you pull each other to the side. You don't want everybody in your mix. So it was one of those conversations, take this walk with me type of thing. So we took the walk. It was very good conversation. But I'm like, do I really want to do that internship? Is it paid? She was like, yeah, it's paid. I'm like, how much? Because I get a certain amount already out here. I mean, it's not hourly, but I get a certain amount. It can be uncapped or capped. It can, so she was like, I'm gonna come back tomorrow with this opportunity. And I said, all right, I'll be here tomorrow. Like, I'm making money. This is my job. I'll be here tomorrow. And sure enough, she came back tomorrow. And the people who didn't know part of the conversation was like shocked. Like, Devin, why she's coming up to you with a clipboard for a stack of papers like this? Why you gotta sign some waivers? Like, what are you doing? Like, and I'm like, bro, she's talking about some internship. I get some money. I'm all about the money. Like, he's like, so I went for it. I took, one step in. I did it. But then I was like, I took an eight-week boot camp. Long story short, it was an 8-week boot camp that she signed me up for to learn how to code. So now I'm dealing with computers, breaking my head. My head feel like about to explode because that one line, that one dash, it was just too much for me. But I start stuff and I finish it. So I finished it, and I was like, yo, that was good. Y'all paid me a little bit well, but that wasn't for me. Like, I want to deal with my people. I want to do something hands-on. So she's like, all right, I'm going to have something that's opening in a week or two, so I'm going to come back and, this is the same rodeo. I said, all right, a week or two, that's kind of a long time. So, I'm going to be doing the same thing that I'm doing. I'm still going to be in the streets. I can't wait 2 weeks without no paycheck.
I got to eat.
We got to eat. So long story short, she comes back in 2 weeks. She's like, I got this internship opportunity for you. It's called Professional Pathways. But this is different now because you're going to be interning in City Hall, like state government. And she's like, you're gonna have to have like an interview, like, and the other internship was I didn't have to do no interview for. She's like, this one you're gonna have to interview for, all of that stuff. So I'm like, yeah, you know, it's nothing for me to go to Macy's, put on a suit, you know, look nice. I could do that, you know. So, you know, I went, got me some formal clothes. She's like, you know, get ready for the interview, be here at this time. If you can't get there on time, let me know. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna be there. So I go to the interview. They selected me. I was probably one of like 20 applicants that got accepted to the program. And at the time, like I said, I had to be labeled at risk. So I was I keep in mind everything. I'm like, yo, why did this just fall out of the sky? Like, where was this at when I was doing what I was doing? Why did it just fall out of the sky right now? So I'm still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm not fully removing myself from the neighborhood because that's my guaranteed income. This internship, the funding could run dry. Streets, it's not gonna really get dry. I mean, it might be slow paces and fast paces, but it's not gonna get dry. So I got selected. Now I'm interning in City Hall, city government. So I have to, like, you know, it was different vibes for me because I'm like, I'm around all these people who were dressed up, all fancy schmancy, they chiefs this, they department leads this, they all got titles and everything, and I'm just like, I'm Devin, I was from the neighborhood, like. And so I'll shorten it up because I see the clock over there, but
yeah.
It's all right, bro. It's a long-winded one. It's a long-winded one.
We're all going home. It's a beautiful journey, Dev. Take us home. Take us home.
So I start stuff and finish it. So I was like a year in. I'm like, this obviously doesn't have a time constraint to it. I was a year in. I'm still interning for a year. Who interns that long? Like, y'all must be lying to me. Like, are y'all gonna give me the job or not? What comes out of this? So, long story short, I was given a job at City Hall under the Health and Human Service Department. They made a position for me as EA, but that was because they seen the growth in my work and growth in my development. Fast forward, you know, a year later, I had to have 2 years in city government experience. Then I'm doing My Brother's Keeper. I'm doing fresh tracks now. I'm in OYF spaces like this. And I'm like, okay, there's something here. So fast forward, the journey is beautiful, as Steve says. Currently, I've been a legislative aide for 17 years at the state of Massachusetts. But for me, I don't lose sight of how that happened and why that happened and how I can continue to make those opportunities happen for young brothers like myself, young sisters like myself. And I'll end it.
Thank you, Dev. Just want to, we're going to quickly shift, but let me just name a couple things. One is the notion that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. It's so clear when you have these conversations. The other is we don't tokenize young people. You know, I think it's hard to tell your story, and I appreciate you guys telling your stories, and sometimes you end up talking about trauma. I heard a couple of folks mention it, and you know, I want to appreciate this audience as a safe space. I think each of you expressed that you felt comfort in this space in a way that we wouldn't have asked you to share what you shared, and I just much respect, because you know, I hate that sometimes part of the game, if you will, in this work is to lift up individual stories in a way that only furthers. We were talking, some of the opening plenaries, some of the young activists got real about the nonprofit industrial complex. So I think we're gonna, we don't have time for a couple more points. We need to pivot to hearing from Anthony, but we will be back as a collective for questions and Q&A. The other thing that I think is so important that I've heard Dr. Anthony Burrow talk about is how deeply social purpose is. And I heard that in each of your stories. I mean, it's not an individual who just pops suddenly in their head purpose. And there are a set of experiences that help a person find their sense of purpose. And it was really fascinating to hear the pathways that each of you were on to find that sense of purpose. And so we will continue this conversation. Folks are going to want to talk to you afterwards, I'm sure. But for now, let's step off the stage and invite Dr. Anthony Burrow to come up and do a one. thank you guys. Thank you for giving us a story.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Wonderful. People in the back, can you hear me as well? Thumbs up. Thank you. Awesome. To the folks who are just on stage, thank you for what you shared. You've given us a window into your life that I'm not sure many other people here would have done that. And it's important to remember we're not museums, right? We're not open with a set of exhibits for people to kind of peruse with their hands behind their back and walk around and pick which experiences of our lives they care most about. And I just want to honor what we just heard. We're privileged to have heard it. And I think that's a big deal. So I want to thank you for doing that. And I think there's a real heavy responsibility with what we're going to do with the information we just heard. I'll leave it there. I think you have to think about that for yourself. But I just want to acknowledge what we just heard. I also want to say thank you to the folks who made it possible for me to be here today. And I know it's a whole team of people. And, you know, as somebody who's sort of a self-diagnosed introvert and an externally diagnosed person who's slow to warm up, it usually takes me about 3 months to start talking to people in a room like this. But from Steve and Monique and team and Geneva, you've forced me to do it in about 3 minutes, right, when I first got here. And let me be specific. What you've done is over the past couple of days that I've been here, you've hastened the pace at which I had to transition from getting to Aspen to being in Aspen. And that's hard to do. Not many people do it, but you've pulled that off. And what it allowed me to do is to sink into the conversations and get to know people. So it's important to me. I had a conversation with Devin yesterday. I don't know where I'd be right now if I hadn't had that conversation. But I had a conversation with Devin yesterday, and I got to meet him, and it matters to me. It matters a lot to me that we had that conversation. So the fact that I could speed up how quickly I could connect to people. And I think about, I look around the room, the friends that I've made here, real friends. One was just mentioned, John Bear. I have like a new homie in the room right now, John Bear. I just met him yesterday. He came up to me afterwards. We were talking. He said, you know what? I know you talk about purpose. It's an ancient concept. And I was like, yeah, John, I think it is an ancient concept. It's something I think about too. It's something we grapple with for a lot of different ways and in a lot of different times. And so I put something together. This morning, I woke up really early, still thinking about that conversation, John. We walked for about 5 or 6 minutes, but during that time, we covered a lot of ground. And I put this together for you. So this is not for anybody else. This is just a slide for John. If you're here, John, this is just for you. This quote matters to me. It's written by Seneca, a philosopher who's figured prominently in my life. And he writes, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. I think about this passage a lot. It shaped a lot of my thinking, a lot of my professional and personal experiences. And I think about how it informed the work that I do in purpose. And for so much of my career, I've thought about this passage one way, that if you don't know where you're going in life, then all the opportunities, all of the nudges, all of the tailwinds you might receive are sort of kind of fruitless. You don't know where you're going, right? If you don't know where you're going, even help may not appear like help, right? Because you're now 5 miles downstream and you really want to go that direction. So I kind of thought if you don't know where you're going, then really no opportunity can be beneficial to you, right? But more recently, my thinking on this has evolved. Even though the statement has remained the same, I've changed. And now I think I read it slightly differently. I'm wondering if it's almost like if you don't know where you're going, then no wind, the absence of wind, could be favorable. And that's tough for folks like us who are innovative and creative. We're trying to create spaces for young people, to push them in directions, to nudge them in directions that we want them to go. They tell us where they want to go. We want to push those directions and open doors for people. But what about creating spaces where people who don't yet know where they're going, they don't quite have it all figured out, can be still, can be stable? I heard that in all the narratives we just heard, moments of stability and stillness. What does that look like? And then when they're ready, then they can go forth and set the world on fire in the ways that these folks are doing right now. But that's a really keen insight. And so for John, I just appreciate, John, that conversation about how purpose is ancient. It feels that way to me too. You know, one thing that's a little bit more recent is a project I've been working on a lot with some colleagues, some folks in this room here, we call the Contribution Project, as my thinking on what purpose is and its sort of essential nature is evolving. We put together this project called the Contribution Project. We open it up at my university. Any student we invite to submit an idea for a contribution that they want to contribute to themselves or to others. Anything goes. You tell us a contribution you want to do, and you're entered in the running to receive $400 to go pursue that contribution. We don't adjudicate what it is. It's not up to me whether I consider that a contribution or not. You do. So it's a contribution for whom the consequences matter. They believe it is. And every spring, we select 100 of these contributions and we fund them. This has been fun. This has endeared me to my campus. Fundamentally, made me think about students in a fundamentally different way, watching the ideas that they have. But it's also been something else. It's been a canopy for accelerating our learning about purpose. An interesting insight is our early studies we've been doing around this project is on days in which contributors are working on their project, they feel more purposeful. It's fascinating. So in addition to sort of the benefits to the communities or campus or to the individuals that they want to benefit, it's actually giving rise to a greater sense of purpose among the contributors themselves. That's interesting, and it clashes with my former attempts. What I used to do, you can ask my department chair, I used to stand in the hallway and try to hand out money and say, at what point do you feel purposeful? It never happened, and that's a bad business model, by the way. So, and I think it almost cost me my job, but it didn't. I survived that moment. But it's fascinating. I can't pay you enough money to feel purposeful, but I can pay you to work on a contribution of your design, and it can give rise to purpose. That's an interesting insight. I would love it. That symbol right there is a link to, you can click on it, and however phones work these days, you can go to the site and you can read about the contributions, read about the project. I would be tickled if you did. And I think some of the things these folks are working on in contributions are the very nature of your work. I think you'd be interested in what folks are actually doing, and I'd be happy to connect you, or you connect directly to them. They'd love it as well. All right, what about my contribution? With a little bit of a heads up of what folks would be sharing here today, I thought, in fairness, if we're going to ask people to talk and reflect upon their experiences, I want to be a part of that too. I want to talk a little bit about where I'm coming from and what gives rise to my sense of contribution and purpose in life. What you're looking at is an image that not many people have seen. My closest friends, I wouldn't show them this image, but you're getting a window into my life. That's me at age 10. I had hair at one point at age 10, and I also had a pig. I was in the 4-H program. I raised pigs, I showed them at fair, and I would sell them. And I learned, oh good, 4-H, shout out to 4-H in the room. I didn't know, when I was a kid in 4-H, I didn't know it was a program. It wasn't until I was like 30 I realized that not everybody's born into a 4-H program. I thought it was just what we do in life, but 4-H has been a formidable experience in my life. And it was in 4-H that I learned about contribution. I learned that I could matter, that I could make a difference, right? That I could do something that would actually show up in the world in a way that sort of surprised even me, that I could do something in this way. And I would sell pigs, and I would raise money, and I would use that money to buy things for the house, for equipment around the farm. I bought my first baseball glove with the pigs that I would sell. It really mattered to me in a way. And the point that Steve just made, that I think about these things. I'm going to talk today about purpose. I might talk about contribution or other resources. I'm a psychologist by training, but I don't mean to imply that these assets are only of the individuals. I find purpose deeply, profoundly social. I find contribution social, the things people are doing. In this picture, if I didn't talk about this for a second, in this picture you might not really focus on Andrew, the kid on the right side of the screen. That's my best friend. Andrew, he went on to pharmacy. I went into psychology. He clearly chose the better job, right? But we don't raise pigs anymore, but we still talk about the experience of being in 4-H and what it's done for us and the experiences we had there. Behind my shoulder in that picture, that's my grandparents on the bleachers in the back. I can't think of anything I did in 4-H where my grandparents weren't there, my aunts and uncles. Everything that I was doing in 4-H, learning how to demonstrate, to speak in public, to explain intricacies of crop yield monitoring, all those experiences, my family was there with me, right? So I brought them along with me, and they're still with me in this particular way. So contributions are social experience as is purpose. So it's a theme I'll come back to as we go through. So here's a bit of an agenda. I won't name all the points here. This is probably a bit aspirational for time, the number of things I want to get to today, but I want to sort of talk about the defining characteristics and sort of the contours of purpose in various ways, and we'll go through all of these things as we go through. Okay, so let's start here. I want to tell you about purpose, and what's interesting to me is you can really start anywhere by delving into the literature. What's fascinating is I don't think most people know that there is a scientific literature on purpose, right? But it's been raging, it's been churning for about 45 to 50 years now in the psychological literature. There's a deep empirical literature on the experience of purpose and what it's doing in our lives. And I would implore you to look anywhere, to start anywhere, and you might be enamored. I'm sort of blown away by what you see here. Here's an example. A couple years back, a group of epidemiologists were working in a rural region in Japan, and they wanted to know what factors predict the life and well-being and longevity of older adults living in this community. So what predicts the health and well-being of older adults here? So as epidemiologists, they had their typical battery of instruments. So we wanted to know about body mass index, diet, exercise, smoking, drinking, these kinds of factors. Embedded in their survey was an interesting item, though, something's kind of curious from an epidemiological standpoint. They asked, do you have a reason for living? It's a fascinating question, right? Do you have a reason, kind of in your face, direct, do you have a reason for living? This is a concept that they translated to ikigai, or purpose in life, according to these researchers. And as interesting as the question was, the response category was interesting, right? It was just dichotomous. So it was just yes or no. So these researchers wanted to ascertain, do you have a reason, without wondering what that reason actually was? Kind of an interesting thing. Now, I'll jump here, but anytime you do longitudinal research with older adults, there's the unfortunate byproduct of attrition, right? People pass away. But savvy investigators can capitalize that and ask, well, did we learn anything about them when they were here that might predict what happened to them over time? So to jump to the punchline here, controlling for those familiar factors, the predictors of health and longevity, exercise, diet, and those things. What they showed is that relative to people who said, yes, I have a reason for living, those that said no to that question were upwards of twice as likely to have died over the course of the study, right? It's fascinating, right? It's a 4-year study. 4 years later, people who simply said no to this question had twice the odds of having passed away over the course of the study. And it wasn't just a general main effect. Really, no matter how you splice the data, what you see is that the general trend was that, whether for those who were the oldest or youngest in the study, or those with the most or fewest resources, income or psychological resources, the general trend was those who said yes were more likely to be alive by the end of the 4-year period. Now, what's fascinating is this isn't just one study or one finding. Here's 12 other papers where the exact same thing has been shown up. Different national contexts, different cultural contexts, different measures of purpose in life, different age groups. Purposeful people enjoy longevity. They tend to live longer than their peers who don't feel as purposeful in life. Far be it for me to suggest we don't need replication. I think we do need replication in psychological studies, but I'm not sure that this is the effect that I would continue to replicate. It keeps showing up time and time again. A better question is why? What must be true about purpose that is conferring this benefit to people? Well, one might be that purposeful people might be physically healthier overall. The past 15 years or so in the literature, what we see is that purpose corresponds with greater physical and physiological functioning. As you walk around the body, what you see is that purposeful people enjoy lower risk of cognitive decline, lower risk of developing Alzheimer's, lower risk of stroke. If you're like me and you have an irregular heartbeat, purposeful people's heart skips fewer beats over the course of a day. Why would that be true? Why would purpose correspond with less arrhythmia, right? It's fascinating. Purposeful people recover faster from surgery. These are not trivial effects, by the way. So if you think about measuring purpose on a scale from 1 to 5, every unit increase in purpose from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 corresponds with about a 25% reduction in the risk of heart attack. So these are significant. These are notable correlations here with us having a sense of purpose. One of the most recent findings is that purpose corresponds with better hearing. So people who score higher measures of purpose can hear sounds played at lower decibels. Like what is going on with purpose that is corresponding with all of these wonderful things in life? I want to pause here to take a beat and say why I think it's important to know this is that I know that there's people who maybe until right now kind of thought of purpose as a fluffy concept, right? It's ethereal, it's elusive. Well, what is purpose? It's fluffy to people. You can measure purpose, you can measure it reliably, and that reliable measure predicts longevity and better physical and physiological functioning. This isn't fluff, right? We put fluff on sandwiches in Massachusetts, right, Devin? But this isn't fluff. This is actually something we want to put in our lives to extend them, right, or to navigate to the ports that we want to actually get to. Okay, so if it's that, how prevalent is it? Is this a story of the haves versus the have-nots, right? Is that what this is? Well, one thing I think it's important to know is when you actually look at measures of purpose in life, right, depending on where it is. So you're looking here at the 10 largest studies on the planet of purpose. So studies that have the largest samples, numbers of people represented. Across these 10 studies, we're talking about 360,000 individuals across the planet. And the different height bars correspond to purposes measured in different ways. 3-item scales, 5-item scales, 6 or 7-item scales, whatever it might be. So we can put little belts around these things and say, here's the midpoint on these scales. So what does the average person score on measures of purpose in life? Are they kind of at the midpoint? Are they below it? Across these 10 most populated studies, what we see is that people on balance are exceeding the midpoint by far. This is not a statistical inference. It's just a description. The way researchers think to measure purpose, people experience this in great abundance. This is not true of all the resources we can think of. If I were to ask you about sleep quality, right, or energy that you have, people don't always exceed the midpoint on the ways we assess things, but purpose they do. I share this because we oftentimes reify this idea of finding purpose, and I don't fully understand it. Best-selling books, here's the 3 easy steps to finding purpose. The prescription to find purpose seems to infer a solution to a problem that is relatively easy to solve. Most of us walk around feeling purposeful, right? Now, we may not bother to ask about it, we don't want to talk about it, and that doesn't discount people who might feel less of this in their lives. But those people may be the exception to the rule. Most of us feel purposeful. What about adolescents? Do they? Sorry for the small font here, but this essentially shows a comparison between adolescents, the second decade of lifespan, compared to 20 to 30-year-olds. So early adulthood, or we think of emerging adulthood to midlife. Essentially, there's no difference. Now, sometimes we do see developmental stage differences. So early adolescents may score lower on measures of purpose in life than later adolescents. But adolescents as a group, the second decade of life, look like their adult counterparts in terms of feeling a sense of purpose in life. Now, we may not bother to ask them, we may not engage with it, but it's there. And I think that's an important point. Yesterday, I was talking about what adults think about youth purpose. But this is what youth tell us about their sense of purpose. They're exceeding the midpoint just the same as their adult counterparts. Maybe it's helpful to see this way. Here's 3 different measures of purpose, measuring, assessing it in different ways. What we see is that on a scale of purpose, and you can see the midpoint plotted there, these scores are skewed, favoring the upper end. Most youth walking around feel a sense of purpose in life. Okay, something you may not have seen before, I'm going to show you this. These are data that come from a project we've been working on with the Grip Tape program. Grip Tape is a program that asks young people to nominate something that they want to learn. It puts them in the driver's seat of that learning. So you articulate what is it you want to learn, and we're going to support you by offering you up to $500 and an adult champion. The adult champion, by the way, cannot have an expertise in the thing that you want to learn. They're just there to support your learning, and you're driving the boat here. What we've done is we've followed them for the entire learning challenge. This is a 10-week learning challenge. These are 70 consecutive days of observations of felt purpose among these adolescents, aged 14 to 19 from across the country. This is a real privilege to see a window into the lives of young people in this way. I have an adolescent at home. I can't get 7 minutes of his time, let alone 70 days of observations. They told us about their purpose every day. And what you see here on this 5-point scale, for the average adolescent in the sample, it's at or above the midpoint. You might notice the peaks and valleys. It's undulating a little bit in the unfolding context of our everyday lives. We can predict what gives rise to the peaks or troughs. What do the peaks and troughs predict? Right? This gives us better, more granular insight into what purpose looks like in the unfolding context of our lives. The peaks, by the way, are days in which they meet with their champion. We know that on days in which young people talk to their champion, they update them on what their learning progress is like, they feel more purposeful than their average. Right? The low points are days in which they said they didn't work on their learning challenge. They are here to work on this thing or to learn this thing. Days they didn't get an opportunity to do that, they felt the least amount of purpose on those days. We can model these things. Purposeful days also predict well-being. The peaks correspond with greater life satisfaction, positive affect, lower negative affect. We call this subjective well-being or happiness. So purposeful days, sort of a eudaimonic well-being, corresponds with pleasure. They actually feel good on those days as well. Okay. My colleagues and I have gotten in on this action by asking, well, what must be true about purpose in the consistent manufacturing of all of these wonderful things? Or what is purpose doing sort of in our everyday lives? And I'll go through this list really briefly. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to unpack or clarify any of these points. We've shown that essentially purpose corresponds with indicators of flourishing, Purposeful people experience more positive emotion, less negative emotion. They tend to be more generative and think about contribution, hence this contribution project. They're thinking about other people. Maybe how long you live or how well you live isn't your thing, right? Maybe giving things to others isn't your thing. You care about money. Understandable. Purposeful people have more of that too. Right? They make more in a calendar year, and in adulthood, they save more over time. They're less impulsive. Purposeful individuals, particularly youth, are not thinking necessarily about the here and now. They're thinking about their downstream experiences. I'm ultimately going to be over there, and I want to be well-resourced when I get there. It's sort of an interesting insight. They're more hopeful and agentic. They see an imperfect world, and they think that they can do something to make it better. It's fascinating. Purposeful individuals are more engaged in learning. Even when they say the topic is boring, they want to learn more. Now that I'm thinking about my purpose, I want to hear everything you can tell me because I might be able to use it for the thing that I'm pursuing. Some interesting studies in that. It gets embodied. Purposeful individuals can navigate physical spaces better. So this idea of purpose as a sense of direction actually gets embodied, and they can physically navigate spaces. I'm clearly not purposeful. I got lost on this campus yesterday. I went off way far away. I don't have but purposeful people can navigate their way back and forth in interesting ways, okay? And we've done work more recently in the context of the pandemic. Purposeful youth, even though they're in the same pandemic we are, they perceive the pandemic as being less disruptive to the things they're ultimately trying to accomplish, right? It's a worldview changer in this way. So what is it? I'm grateful that I can get to this point in the conversation without having yet defined it. That's a big deal to me, and I appreciate you indulging me on this point. Most people start with the definition, and we can get off in certain ways. Purpose can be a lot of things. There's a lot of definitions, working definitions in the field. But I'm going to give you a couple definitions here. One I talked about yesterday, and I'll go through this quickly. Purpose might be thought of first and foremost as a central or self-organizing life aim. I'll put the whole definition up here. One that organizes and stimulates goals and manages behaviors and provides a sense of meaning. We think of purpose as sort of a hub, right? It's sort of a glue that can be a center of gravity for all the things, who we are, our identity, a sense of self, our motivations, our needs, right? Our desires, right, our plans. It can hold on to all those things and direct them toward the things that we want most. And it's doing this in the service of organizing our goals. We think of purpose as sort of a source of optimal resource allocation. Optimal resource allocation, that when you feel purposeful, you know how to allocate your finite set of resources. Right? So time, energy, money. You don't have endless amounts of those things. So if I have a sense of direction, I can make choices. I can't hang out today. I gotta get up early in the morning and go do this thing. If I don't have that sense of direction, I may spend my resources sort of splattered in different ways, maybe hedging against each other at times. So we think of purpose as this, and it's organizing our goals. Right, I always think of purpose as sort of a trapper keeper. Remember trapper keepers? My trapper keeper had like Transformers, very identity affirming. Transformers. It was holding all of my folders, so they weren't getting strewn about. It was holding everything together in that way. So purpose, sort of the trapper keeper of who we are. I want to offer one more definition, one that gets a lot of traction in the youth purpose literature. Bill Damon and his colleagues at Stanford have argued that purpose is a generalized intention to accomplish something that is both meaningful to the self and of consequence to the world beyond the self. It's a fascinating sort of depiction here. So there's agreement that purpose is an intentionality. It is out in front of us. Temporally speaking, it's prospective. It's forward-looking. But what they argue is that purpose needs to involve other people as well. I think this is a wonderful moment to invite folks to think about whether this must be true to you. Do you think of that as purpose? Must your purpose have anything to do with other people? Right? Asking youth themselves, is your purpose pro-social? Is it of consequences to the world beyond you? Some folks would say, well, if it doesn't meet those criteria, we can't call it purpose. This is an invitation, I think, for us to think about what purpose looks like up close in communities for whom the consequences really matter. Because when we can define it, we can develop frameworks and measures, we can operationalize it, and then we can actually develop testable hypotheses. Is purpose doing what you think it's doing? Is it functioning in the way that you predict? But some general things thinking about this. Okay, let me move through a couple of these. How would you measure something like this? How do you measure purpose? You could ask it explicitly. You could ask questions like this, right? Is there enough purpose in your life? Things you do are worthwhile? Here's this question again. I have a lot of reasons for living. We tend to think that people who endorse these items, right, have a sense of purpose in life. The stronger you say, yeah, I really agree with these things, or reverse code them. If you agree with these things, we say you feel purpose to a stronger degree. You have a strong sense of purpose in life. So you can ask people these questions, but here's where things get really interesting, fascinating actually. you can do something else with purpose. And it looks something like this. I'm going to walk you through how this actually looks. So you can actually look at these images here. So what you see here is an image of Denzel Washington. He's an actor. He's a very talented actor, award-winning, and he's an attractive actor, right? Here's Ryan Gosling, also an actor, very successful, also very handsome. Here's Eva Mendes, right? Also an actress, very attractive. I think Ryan and Ava actually are in a relationship. Imagine that, being attractive and finding each other in life. That's just really, really remarkable. As it turns out, it's actually not about acting at all. It's about something else. So think about the most attractive person that you know. Just conjure the image of the most attractive person you know. Just as a placeholder, we'll just use me for just a moment. So if it was me, we'll just bring it up. Okay. As it turns out, attractive people are more purposeful. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest about this. It's not that attractive people walk around saying that we're real purposeful. That would be really annoying if I was walking around saying that all the time, right? It's that it's the individuals who we think are attractive, we collectively just view as more attractive. Those are the people who score higher on our measures of purpose. There's an implicit relationship. And it's not really about attraction, it's interpersonal appeal. Purposeful individuals are those who we want to be around, we want to be in conversation with, we want to talk to, we want to get to know better. I think this has real purchase for young people, adolescents, at a time when we're thinking about our social connections to other people. How do we connect, right? Do we belong? Are we being rejected or included? We all care about those things, but adolescents in particular make decisions. They navigate their social ecology by thinking and monitoring their world in this way. Do we ever think about purpose as being a resource that we want to cultivate among young people to stand up a beacon that might actually bring in the social connection? You look like you're up to something. I want to be a part of it. What are you doing over here? Right? Is that on our menu of ways we would help young people navigate their social world? I think there's a ton of opportunities to do this. And where we see purposeful youth, we see a broader and deeper social network. They know more people, and the relationships they nominate as more meaningful or sort of deeper connections here. So purpose might be sort of a beacon to help people make better and stronger connections. Okay. So turn the corner here, and what I'll say is I think it's also important to understand why this is happening. I could list the correlates of purpose, and it's accumulating to be a mountain high. What purpose is related to is fascinating, and it's the kind of things that you would want for yourself and your friends around you. You'd want to have a strong sense of purpose in life, but why? What is the functional explanation? Well, my colleagues and I have a theoretical framework about this. We call it purpose as an affordance for psychological homeostasis. It's a mouthful. I won't even bother repeating. All we mean by that is purpose affords psychological stability. In a world that is very dynamic, it's changing all the time, it's throwing a lot of different experiences at us, purpose might keep us even keel and allow us to ride out with some stability a world that is actually very unstable. We do this in a lot of different ways. We test this and see if we can find evidence or support of what we're theorizing, and a lot of daily diaries looking at the kinds of stressors and challenges that happen in everyday life. But I'm going to give you an example. We try to add a little bit more richness to what we're actually doing here. So we did a study on the trains in Chicago. So this study was done in Chicago, and the Red Line runs the north-south corridor in Chicago. And we asked first-year college students to ride the trains across Chicago, simply asking them how they felt along the way. We did this because there's theory that people, when they are around those who they perceive as different from them, they shrink, they hunker down, they stop thinking about how they're connected. We feel distressed when we're around others who we perceive as different. That's an interesting commentary in an increasingly diverse society, right? We can value social diversity, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's linguistic, whether it's faith traditions. When we are around people who we perceive as the same, we want to connect. We think we have something in common. When we perceive differences, we stop thinking about how we're connected, and we shrink. So if this is a society that is increasingly diverse, what role can we play in actually helping people better navigate this, we thought? So putting people on the trains in Chicago was asking, how do you feel as you're riding this train when passengers are coming on and off? What they didn't know was we were assessing their mood, positive and negative mood across the train. What they didn't know is that we had experimenters on each car. So we were keeping track of the ethnic composition of the train as people were riding through Chicago. And as you might expect, what we showed is that when people were on trains where the passengers looked more like them, the percentage of passengers were more resembled the participants and their self-reported ethnic background in our study, their positive affect went up, and their negative affect went down. But when people were on train cars characterized by greater out-group representation, the train cars looked less like them, distress went up, negative affect went up. It was an uncomfortable experience. But that effect was driven largely for people who scored lower than their peers on purpose in life. 5 minutes before getting on the train, we assessed purpose. And those who scored a standard deviation below the average in this study, those are the students who showed this affective reactivity. Students who scored above the average, standard deviation above the average than their peers on purpose, statistical flatline. We couldn't predict their mood as a function of who was in the room or who was on the train car, right, as a function of this thing. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the literature on affective reactivity, emotional reactivity, this is a killer. You do not want your mood to be bouncing around in the just everyday life experiences, right? You want to remain more even keel, and what purpose seems to afford is a mitigating effect. People who walk down with purpose. We replicated this experimentally. Now we brought people to the train station and had them write about their purpose for 5 minutes or write about the last movie that they saw. And people who had written about their sense of purpose for 5 minutes before boarding showed the same effect. So whether you walk around with a dispositional sense of purpose or you just have an opportunity to reflect on it for 5 minutes, you still show this mitigating effect. Okay, one last piece here is, I don't want you to think I'm just focusing on negative, stressful things. We also look at this in the context of positive things. We ask people, this is with a group of college students, we've asked them to take selfies. Apparently one cool thing to do is take a photo of yourself and put it online. People really like doing this. We had them do this, and then we told them, hey, we're beta testing a website, and your photo's been posted for about 15, 20 minutes. And you got a certain number of likes on that photo. And it's just been up, sort of, you should know you got a couple of likes on this. And you were either told you got average number of likes as everybody else, or more likes or less likes. And what we showed is that those people who were told they received more than average number of likes, they had higher self-esteem as a consequence. This is causal. You can simply tell people they received more likes than others, and it enhanced their sense of self-esteem relative to those who were told they got average or less than average number of likes. Right? This is an interesting commentary on how people derive their sense of self-esteem here. This wasn't real. This was a beta site in our lab. I'm not even sure the computer was plugged in. We just told them that they got these likes, and it still mattered. However, it was only there for people who scored lower than their peers on sense of purpose in life. They were the ones that were reactive. Their self-esteem was contingent to this like narrative. People who scored a standard deviation higher than their peers on purpose, so you couldn't show this, there was no effect here. Their self-esteem was already elevated. Same story, you would not want your mood, your self-esteem to be contingent on whether people like your selfie. It might feel good in the moment, but you can't live your life going through that way because all of a sudden your self-esteem is now contingent, is outsourced to other people. You want to walk around with a strong sense of self-esteem regardless, and purposeful people have that. Okay, last piece here. How would you get this? If you're with me so far and purpose sounds like a resource worth thinking about, worth cultivating, where do you get it? Where's the purpose store, right? Well, one way you to go about this is you can ask purposeful people, where did they get it? We do this in a lot of ways. We do this with interviews. We do this with quantitative analyses. We sort of probe a little bit people who score high on measures of purpose, having them unpack how they arrived here. You just heard a little bit about this before I came on, how people arrive where they arrive. And I'm going to go through just 3 of these pathways. I think there's more than 3 pathways, but 3 seem reliable. They keep showing up over and over again in different data sets, different samples and populations of youth. One is proactive. Proactive purpose development are those people who keep working, chipping away at something. It's like a hobby. Early on, it was just something I did in my spare time. I had a little bit of time away, and I started working on this thing, and over time, that hobby became a purpose. I started to name it as a purpose, but it wasn't that when it started. And we can contrast that with the reactive pathway. I heard a lot about reactive pathways. Something happened. Reactive pathways, there's something that happened in my life, and that moment inspired the purpose that I'm talking about now. Reactive and proactive pathways, they can be just as purposeful, but reactive individuals, they are clear about what event sort of triggered this whole thing and created and sort of sparked the whole thing. Proactive people are much less sure. They don't know when it all happened, right? They don't know, was it the door handle I touched? Was it the person I sat next to? I just know that now I have it, but it wasn't that before. We can also think about social learning. There's another group of individuals whose sense of purpose is derived by watching purposeful others, mimicking their behaviors. There's someone in their world who's already purposeful, whether the content is the same or not. They just know what it looks like to enact purposeful behavior. Whether it's an aunt, whether it's a grandmother, you watch it and you see it, and you turn those behaviors into the things that you're going after in your life. We see evidence of these pathways, and they're all useful. There's no adjudicating between these in terms of the benefits that we see with purpose. If you feel a strong sense of purpose in life, despite how you get it, this is for us to understand how might we play a role being in the social ecology of individuals. What role can we play in promoting or supporting or scaffolding some of these pathways? Okay. I just want to take a moment and say thank you for this. I think what's next here is we desperately need to think and reimagine how we share the science of purpose. I have the purview of watching a literature accumulate, put in journals that most of us don't have access to. Even my best friends can't read the articles that I write. That's not that they should, but that's an interesting sort of insight there. One thing we could do is actually open this up. What if we thought about a space in which the science of purpose is conducted in an open, transparent, and collaborative space? My colleague, Jana Heritados, and I, she's the Chief Science Officer at Hope Lab, are dreaming of a space we're calling the Purpose Commons, where we're sharing the science of purpose. We're trying to leverage the science to help programs that are designed to build purpose among young people, or programs that are building other resources or assets among young people, and ask how purpose might further leverage what they're doing. And we want to build community and explore and learn how might people leverage and use the science of purpose, whether it is the purposeful pursuits themselves or purpose as a resource that can further leverage and enhance what young people are doing. And as we co-construct this space, we're looking for partners and collaborators in this. So if this sounds like you, I would also implore you to take a photo of the screen, and we also have some handouts for you. If we're interested, we'd love to hear from you. If this is something of interest to you and what might be interesting to you about it, and I can more than be happy to share my slides, and I'll stick around after. My family, my parents, would be really disappointed if I didn't take a moment and acknowledge all of the people who poured into this. I think about all of my research collaborators who've been helping me do the work over the years, the funders, the generous funders who supported the work. There's a photo of my research lab. There's undergraduates in my lab that never came back from the train. They're still in Chicago. They never came back, so I want to thank them who all the time that they poured into this. And of course, last but not least, thank you. I'll be happy to take any questions.
You want to just join us?
Can we have him sit here?
Yes, of course. Thanks. Welcome back to our esteemed panelists. Shout out again to Tony. Thank you, Anthony Burrow, for learning us up on purpose. Let's get mics ready to roll. We only have a few minutes. We're running a little over, but what a powerful gathering. So one thing that came to mind as a reflection, I'll start, is on the, I think Purposeful Commons is a great concept, and thank you, because you've already sourced for the funder community of practice. One thing we've committed to is sourcing big bet opportunities. So way to bring the first one in the first plenary ever. I think there are, I think about like the work in Hawaii where they're really reinventing the entire youth justice system. And they may want to now let you know that they have a Purpose Commons. They're going to have a cooler word for it because, all the cool native Hawaiian words they have. But and Sean calls it wisdom. But I think in this room, Philly Youth Network, there's so many, the Boston folks where we're going soon. You might notice I changed my hat. There's a lot of opportunity to connect those dots within the Opportunity Youth Forum. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that, and you're stuck with us now, so that's great. I also wanted to offer, if there are any reflections, and then we're going to go straight to questions and from the audience. And when we go to questions, there's a thing about questions that sometimes we need to emphasize, which is there's a question mark at the end of them. And so we would just encourage you to find a way to do that, and that's really helpful. But I invite my peers, if there's anything that you heard from Anthony that stuck, that you want to express, And I'm going to give you 2 chances to answer this question now, and then after we come back from Q&A and close. And then a similar question for you, if there were any threads that you heard from the kind of lived experience of young leaders in this space that you would bring back. So I'll leave that right there, and I will just ask you guys anything right off the top, or you want to come back to it? Anything you heard from his presentation? Yeah.
I'll be brief and just say, for me, seeing those slides was very powerful. Thank you for laying out the way you laid it out for us. Sometimes it could sound like it's rocket science, but you delivered it beautiful. But it was the in terms of the reactiveness, the social learning, the proactive. I feel like at times in life you're not caught in that proactive. You're caught most of the times in the reactive and in social learning. So when I spoke about my upbringing, my family, my friends, it was social learning, but then there was also a mixture of reactiveness. So thank you for highlighting that.
Great. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to agree with Devin over here that the reactiveness really stuck out to me because just living on the streets, being at rock bottom, you got really nothing else to really nothing else to do but go up. So, reacting to the poverty and struggles in life, you just gotta go out and get it. So that really stuck out to me.
Awesome. Raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, Kimberly,
it's okay. We can go to questions.
I was assuming you didn't, but I shouldn't have.
No, it's okay. Go to questions.
Right. Raise your hand if you have a question, either for our panel and or for our esteemed presenter. We're going to start in the back with Big Thing.
My man, thank you. First of all, thank you for walking in your purpose, brother, because you have articulated things that I haven't had the language for so long. Speaking to that, I have a particular question around boys and men. There's a lot of research, and there's a great book called Of Boys and Men. It feels as though a lot of boys and men are having a struggle reconciling what does masculinity, identity, what does it mean for me to exist in this world that is no longer congruent with past definitions of what being a man or being a boy means. And I wonder if a great way for us to get to that is through a context and a construct around purpose. And I'm wondering if, through your research, have you seen any difference between girls and boys, as are typically defined, or men and women around having a sense of purpose?
Is that asking me first?
Yeah, that's you. That's you.
Thank you so much for that question. Let me take a broad strokes first, and then we can go deeper if this is unsatisfying. But what's interesting about the purpose literature is I want to split a hair. I talk a lot about sense of purpose, the degree to which we feel purposeful. You heard me riff on that a little bit. We don't see very many demographic distinctions in level of felt purpose or sense of purpose. So you might imagine some, but we actually don't see them replicate from study to study across gender, across ethnic backgrounds, social classes. There are some studies where that exists, but it's hard to replicate some of those effects. Where it shows up is in purpose content, the aspirational substance of what people want to pursue. And just like identities, even in the purpose literature, we see that over time, so developmentally speaking, as we move from adolescence to emerging adulthood to midlife, we see a sort of the refining of purpose content. It gets sharper and more granular and more specific. It's a bit aspirational to start, and then it gets winnowed down. Maybe because the world is chipping away at it, or maybe because you look at the opportunities that are available to us. So there's a demographic distinction on content of what people, either because of demographic or identity, what we'll choose to aspire to, but not on the degree to which people feel it. And the reason I make that distinction is what's doing the lion's share of the work in the purpose literature is sense of purpose. If it's the health benefits you're looking for, you want people to feel it. And what it is may be a secondary or tertiary issue to grapple with. Something that a community can say, we really want this kind of purpose, but just feeling it is really the 0 to 1 that really is important.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think, can you just say a little bit, and I'd be curious to hear our young leaders respond to this too, and then we'll go back to Q&A, moderator's prerogative, but it does strike me that identity is so tied up in all of this, and I heard, and I'd be curious if you guys feel like you've changed your own identity about how you identify with who you are, how you show up. But can you just double click on identity within the context of purpose?
Sure. So identity and purpose, we try to separate those things in the literature, but they're neighbors. They need each other. So we might think of identity as the answer to the question, who are you? Right? And that takes a lot. Like, what are you going to recruit to answer that question, who are you? Is it tradition? Is it past? Is it narratives? Is it a memory? Is it a feeling? Right? A lot gets poured into the answer to the question, who are you? Purpose may be a question about where are you going? And so the interesting thing there is the you in that question needs to be reconciled with identity first. So that way, we might think of purpose as a late developing asset. We don't oftentimes walk into second grade classrooms and say, what is your purpose? That could be a very overwhelming and maybe even scary question for people who've not done the identity work yet. So identity and purpose need each other, and they may be sequentially related. I think there's probably more of a reciprocal relationship, that you work on aspects of your identity, you explore what you could be doing prospectively, and then it's answering questions about identity. But those things need each other, identity and purpose, but they're not synonyms. One's more of a sense of who you are, and one's a little bit more prospective, who you're going to be.
Any quick reactions on whether you all feel a sense of identity, and if your sense of identity has changed over the trajectory of the stories you shared?
Good question.
No.
Yeah, all right. No. That's cool. That's cool. I may try to mess with that a little bit, but keep going. Any, Dev, you at all?
I'll jump in briefly and say, for me, it was the gradual growth in the sense of purpose. The gradual growth in a sense of identity. When you're in the streets, when I was in the streets, I couldn't see it then. Being where I'm at now, I see a lot of things from a very different perspective. But it's all growth, and I like how you put it. They go hand in hand. I feel as though.
My response is kind of funny. So.
All right. Shocker, Kimberly. Shocker.
Oh, okay. So when I first started college, like, when you walk around campus, you can kind of tell what kind of degree program somebody's in just based off of the clothes they wear.
That's so interesting.
And where I went to school, you can tell who the engineers were, you can tell who the biologists were, or you can even tell who were the liberal arts students just by the way they acted and where they hung out. But I think I'm so sorry, but that's a weird response. But
no, not at all.
I think my identity has definitely changed. Like, deep down inside, I knew I was going to be a scientist. I mean, I could walk around anywhere, and I'm happy. Like, look, a leaf on the ground, that makes me happy. Or like a random animal, that makes me happy. And it matches my personality. And I became a scientist because I know what I like. Beautiful. But my purpose, it was kind of a journey trying to figure out why I wanted to become a scientist. Like, the traits were in me, but finding the purpose into, like, really defining why I wanted to be a scientist or why I decided to do the work that I do, I needed to see some kind of impact. I needed, like, that moment in life where it was just an aha moment, like what you kind of talked about earlier. And I think I found that aha moment when I really worked within my community and talked to people that are really impacted by the changes that we see in our community, whether it's through climate change or how wildlife managers interact with us and how we interact with them based off of how they treat us. And I guess I was kind of fueled by anger, and that was my purpose.
Interesting. We don't have time to get into anger, but would like to do a separate plenary on anger as it relates to purpose. Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. So let's do three right here from the back, working forward, and we're just going to do three, and then these guys get to pick the ones that they think are easiest to answer from the three that you all offer.
Hi. Thanks. So you talked a little bit at the end about cultivating purpose, and I was wondering if you conducted or seen any studies about techniques to cultivate purpose, and whether the the cultivating of purpose has a lasting effect, or whether it's transitory and once that technique is not applied anymore, it kind of fades away in the individual.
Wonderful. Thank you for.
Hold on, wait. We're going to just take them all together, just because we're out of time.
I see.
So thank you, though, for jumping right.
Hi, everyone. So my question is, thank you for just a beautiful presentation. So my question is about the study and the data presented in correlation to each other with the youth, opportunity youth, and the aging gracefully, known as the senior community. And what advice do you have to give for those who are failing to thrive and who feels purposeless?
Okay, advice for purpose, those who feel purposeless, I think. We're going to do 4 because I had already said yes to him. But no, you go ahead. It's my bad. Thank you.
All right, so it's on reactiveness, right? So you got instant reactiveness, some stuff you can't avoid, and then you got the reactiveness that you sit with. You got that stuff that's instilled within you. It's like, all right, no, I have to do this regardless. It's me telling myself this, right? And I'm battling this. When you find yourself falling to like that dark place, falling to that just that lower self, and I don't mean lower self like I ain't shit. I have those thoughts too, but that's not what I mean. I mean lower self like this is negativity reacting in this state. This might not be my pure heart. You know what I'm saying? This is what I'm falling back on. How do you pull yourself up and get yourself out that mind state? Still being in the environment, you know what I'm saying, that you grew up with this mind state in. You get what I'm saying?
I got you.
Okay, you guys got that question? Okay, last question.
Yeah, so I'll ask this question. It's kind of complex and it's like an onion, but I'm really interested in the whole idea of nature versus nurture. I know you talked a little bit about some of that in your presentation, specifically as an educator working with, youth specifically who've been affected, poverty, and specifically youth who are in single-parent homes who don't have fathers. I'm really intrigued with the whole notion of networks and the whole idea of, the correlation when you start looking at the connection between purpose and networks and purpose in someone's environment. So I would love to hear a little bit more about those studies and what you find with that. Because that's something that kind of affects the youth that we work with specifically, so thanks.
Okay, we've got 4 questions on the table. You get to answer 1. And pick one. Dev, do you know which one you want to answer?
I'll start with the brother right here in the front. Thank you for the question. It's something in which I think about pretty often. Because of my trajectory, my change, I'm never hypocritical or never judgmental of where I came from. I can show up in the neighborhood looking like this. I can show up in the neighborhood nice and fly like yourself, and it's never gonna be like, yo, you changed up, you switched up. It's all love, and I feel like it's one of those things where you're just leading by example, but I was exposed to different, and I chose to take different and not look back on them as, what are you doing? But how do I help you come up with me? But then those moments where I feel like, dang, like what is this all for? Why, in that dark place, there are moments that get me like that. I would say the last moment is when my brother got killed in 2018. I said, I'm back to the streets, like, we about to do this. But then I had to catch myself and understand my trajectory and how reversing the car is going to be just as worse, than taking the alternative route that I could have went down. So I think it's one of those things where I continue to try to figure out that motivation in me. Motivation is family for me, and it lies at the forefront why I do what I do. And brothers and sisters in the neighborhood, they're your family as well. So when I find myself in that dark place, I think about the why of why it's happening, why I'm here. I can either be dead, I can be in jail, and so I think about that pretty often.
I don't know. I just want to go off of his question again too, because sometimes too I catch myself feeling down too. You know what I mean? And I always tell myself even though I feel like giving up, but I just tell myself, you got to remember where you come from, and you got to find that purpose why you're doing it and the reason why you're doing it, because in the end, you know what I mean, it's only gonna be yourself. You know what I'm saying? So whatever you're doing, make sure that's 100% for you. You know what I'm saying? And make sure when you do it to the fullest of your potential. You know what I mean? So you own that shit. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, hey, you gotta help others too, because they're in the dark too, so you gotta bring them back out. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I gotta say. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Kimberly?
No,
You know
I
what I'm
can't
saying?
add on to that.
You don't
Got that pressure,
That's
baby.
right, any other questions? You're good.
Oh, no, I'm okay.
You're okay?
Yeah,
Okay, we'll
he's
turn
the
it to
expert.
Anthony's got the final response to the questions. Those of you who have questions will be milling around outside. Please find these amazing panelists. Go ahead.
So let me just pick up two of these. The question about how do you cultivate purpose is the question. And I think we have some grumblings of ideas, but I think we need to do more work. This is the cutting edge of the literature. But where we might start with this is thinking about, yesterday I was talking about purpose as a state, right? So we oftentimes just jump into conversations thinking about purpose as a trait, an enduring concept. So what is your purpose is the question we walk into high schools with, or my son is asked on college applications, what is your purpose, or purpose statement, whatever it is. And we think sort of more granular about it. You flip it on its side, rather than thinking about this enduring trait that people walk around with in their backpack, thinking about it as sort of a fleeting experience, like your emotions, right? So we can think about cultivating happiness or positive interest or excitement. And the idea here is asking people, so when over the past week or month have you felt most purposeful? And starting to pay attention and routinize when those moments are and collect those things. So actually making a practice of asking people to reflect on purposeful experiences until it becomes a pattern detection, right? And collaboratively thinking, what do we know about this? And then turning those routines and habits into opportunities. Let's name that. You're most purposeful when you're around these sets of friends, when these educators are present, when you're in this after-school program, when you're in the job, spending your hours working on the job. You can cultivate purpose that way. We can also use the WISE intervention frameworks. So we can briefly give you an opportunity to reflect on purpose. The purpose that is derived there might not be very long lasting, but the implications of it might be. So when we gave people 5 minutes to write about their purpose before boarding the train, that's an hour and 15-minute train ride that they were on. And we still show these effects. So how long it lasts is an empirical question to really unpack this, but you can actually do these things in brief ways. Are you trying to just manufacture the benefits of purpose, or do you really want purpose in an enduring sense? And that question may hinge on this. This question about the environment one is a brilliant one to think about this. I mean, one thing that happens when we start talking about purpose is it's either to people fluffy, or it's ethereal, or it's the fodder of affluence. And I don't understand any of those things. And personally, respectfully to people's opinions about this. Purpose as a psychological construct is born out of hardship. So Viktor Frankl was talking about purpose, surviving a concentration camp. He said before you die physically, you can die psychologically if you don't think about your why and your reason for what's next. So we think about purpose, it's people who've experienced hardship who might feel that the most profoundly. I think I've heard so many times in the past 2 days, hearkening of Dr. King's statement. He motivated a population by articulating a purpose through the dream metaphor. He was I may not get there with you. Right? That's a prospection into the future, and it motivated and organized a collection of people to do something. So I think purpose is always in response to one's environment. If the world were perfect as it is, I see little reason for purpose. Right? But if you see a world that can be improved upon, and we know this, young people in particular who say, the things I want to contribute to the world, this is Andrew Fellini's work, a brilliant neuroscientist at UCLA, the things that I want to do in the world, people are minimizing, they're derogating, they're leaving out. Young people whose sense of contribution is being derogated have a stronger sense of purpose than those who don't. So there's always a relationship to the world that one sees and their sense of purpose in it.
Great. I saw our resident hip-hop artist, Israel, in the back shaking his head to that last statement you just made.
Yes, yes.
So we got to close this out. I want to just connect a few dots. I'm glad you brought Dr. King in, because I keep hearing Dr. King's message that life's most urgent and persistent question is, what have you done for others? And I've heard that call to do for others is really deep. The research you mentioned from Damon speaks to that. So I think we have a lot to do in the coming years around the intersection between purpose and being a part of something larger than oneself. I can see that we got a lot to talk about on that. And I just want to also acknowledge, I talked earlier about how magic happens in Aspen, and I was going to wear hats about magic in Aspen. Shout out to Taos, because I was wearing my Taos hat earlier, so Taos folk. And I'll explain this one in a minute. But it's interesting because we also talked about a magic. I pretended that there were a bunch of funders asking us for interim indicators of magic, and how do you know when there is a magic readiness for some of the sponsorship grants? And one example I gave, and it was just kind of random, was the magic once that I saw at Ideas Festival, where Ta-Nehisi Coates really learned up Mitch Landrieu, the mayor of New Orleans, on structural and systemic racism, on the ways in which culture can either heal, and I heard a ton about culture and identity as being so essential to purpose in many ways, and also how it can be so harmful. And what's so interesting to that conversation that Coates had with the mayor, I mean, yes, as a result, the mayor went back to New Orleans and started pulling down the monuments to the Confederacy because of the power of culture. So that's a pretty magical experience from Aspen. But really, there was also something there about how, and it relates to purpose, about how it is an equity issue. Not every young person gets to go to 4-H with grandma and grandpa cheering you on, and you try stuff and you find your way forward. And so I just think we need to name that, because I also heard that Devin's story, and I hope you don't mind my name in it, but the stories on this stage too often are about young people having to take a really hard path to find a sense of purpose, to want to lead others on the farm and to connect to their culture. And so how do we make that ubiquitous? And the last thing I'll just say as a connection is, for the funders, we keep measuring the wrong stuff. We keep investing in the wrong stuff.
Dead buttocks, you know what I'm saying? Dead buttocks.
And so I think that's part of the exploration. Please don't leave now before the community of practice even starts. But that's part of the exploration we want to do together. So I just wanted to tie that all in, and then funny enough, I also referenced that it's kind of crazy to be in a place at the tip of the spear of income inequality like Aspen, and that we need to be here almost as an act of resistance and to bring community to this space that isn't always accessing the beauty of retreating here. And I referenced, and I know you like Kendrick, I referenced Kendrick Lamar's most recent album, Rich Spirit, and that there's a lot of rich spirit in this room. Yes, and I heard a lot of rich spirit from our panelists. But it's so funny because he actually says one line in it is, blank, I'm attractive. And so I just had to mention that because the Hollywood stars thing is so I just want y'all to know you are attractive. You are attractive. All right, that was a non sequitur. I now have to play the role of Monique Miles and close this Opportunity Youth Forum meeting out, and then encourage us to take a break, get out of the room, and then come back in for the Funder Community Practice. Before I do that, give it up, please, for our expert panel.
Excuse me, Steve. Yeah. If you don't mind.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I just want to add one more thing. Me and Israel did a BMWP. We did an EP around BMWP, focused on all natures of it all. I just want to give y'all 30 seconds of what it sounds like. So, BMWP me, please.
Yeah, nice, Dad.
Yes, sir. Let's go, visionary.
Visionaries. Thank you. I just wanted to leave y'all with that.
Oh, yeah, that's smooth, bro.
We'll email the whole everybody the link to be able to listen to that whole song. Thank you guys. Yes. BMWP's already out in the hip hop spirit. Okay, so just I'm going to do this really brief. There's a lot to say about the Opportunity Forum. Let me just do the short farewell and much love. Thank you to the Aspen Forum team. Thank you to Dulce and Aspen Conference Services. Thank you to all our partners. thank you. I want to hear about the magic that happened in this last 3 days. So don't send me an email. Let's hear about it. The magic hat right now is about Boston. I got in trouble because I'm such a Boston fan. I grew up in Western Mass. And when I wore my Celtics hat to the San Francisco convening, it didn't work out so well after them. So I'm not going to talk any trash about our team, especially since the Red Sox finished in last place. But
it's all good. It's all good.
Magic's going to happen in Boston May 20th to 22nd. Thank you to the Boston folks for hosting us. Please put it on your calendars. We will next see you at the OYF and the BMWP COP in Boston, May 20 to 23, BMWP 22 to 23. But we want you to come to everything. All right, that's next. Be ready for Boston. We're going. Let me hear you say, woo! Woo! And just lastly, thank you to everybody who made the trip. The gift of time is the most important gift. People have hung in. We overprogram the heck out of the OYF. Once you guys leave, you'll see the funders just hang out and like drink on the patio. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. We overprogrammed the heck out of the BMWP thing too, coming soon. But I want to thank everybody who's hung in, who's been a part of this learning. We want your reflections. We want to be in this. We are in this together. Like the Aspens, we are all sharing common roots. E pluribus unum, out of many one. Let's go work on youth pathways that have a sense of belonging, meaning, and purpose, and lead to great outcomes for young people. Save the democracy on the way. Safe travels to everybody from the OYF. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.